It looks like we're live. I'm having some difficulty with with the with the technology. This is my first live, but it looks like Sonia has joined and Jane has joined. Great. Angelo's here. Karen is here. So that's great. It's really great to see you. So there you go, guys. Up to you to please ask questions. I've got some people have asked me some questions already, and I might maybe start with those unless anybody has any burning questions. Janet is here. Hello, Janet. Nice to see you. And so please help yourselves to questions. Please ask some questions. I've already been asked on a different screen. Hope you can still see me. I'm just going to grab those. So let's have a look. I'm trying to get organized in my old age. Okay. Okay. So somebody has asked about it was a doctor actually, and she has asked. Can't remember her name, but if you're watching, you'll know who you are. She has asked about bacteria. Okay, so I think that's probably a good place to see lots of people joining. Indigo's here, Deborah and Barbara. Lovely to see everybody coming along for the first one. I'm thinking of doing these weekly, so give me a shout if you think that's a good idea. I think it would be a great idea because if we say every Friday at 6, or maybe Friday's not so convenient for everybody, maybe we can do it another day. But you can put thoughts in the chat. The chat is, for me, is just over there on the side. I think a weekly, because then everybody knows where to come at the same time each week, and we can have a little chat about food. We can talk about philosophy. We can talk about life. We can talk about all the things, perhaps, that I've posted about during the week. But there you go. That's for down the line. Tonight we're going to be talking about raw food. We're just going to talk about the basic things. If you want to go into particular avenues within raw food, I'm really, really happy to go there. We can talk about ultra processed food. I'm currently writing a book on ultra processed food for dogs. I've done chapter 2. Chapter 1 is the introduction. It's about the whole book. Chapter 2 is about ultra processed, how it's made and why it's really, really bad for dogs. And chapter 3, I'm just battling with chapter 3. I've written a whole load, 10 sections to it already, about benefit, bugs, balance, and bones. These are the 4 reasons that in 2012, the World Small Animal Veterinary Association came out and said there are no benefits to raw, and that bugs are a real problem, and balance is a real problem with raw food, and that bones are really dangerous to raw food. And so basically chapter 2 of the book is going through those elements. And it just so happens that I've just been battling this morning, got up early and was rewriting the section on bacteria. And well, not necessarily just bacteria. We're talking about microbes and how they affect kibble and how they affect raw. And historically, over the last 30 years, what is the hospital count? How many people or dogs or cats have been injured or killed from microbes in food? And actually, if you compare the two, let me just switch that off. Okay. If you compare we're talking over the last 30 years, and that's a substantial time, then the comparison is really remarkable. Okay, it's the first time I've done it in real detail. And if we're talking about microbes in raw and microbes in kibble, then kibble comes out raw comes out very, very well. Because if we're talking about microbes, i.e. tiny, tiny, tiny little organisms, then you've got to then talk about mycotoxins. These are very, very toxic elements like aflatoxin, vomitoxin, putrescitoxin, all these amazingly named toxic elements that grow in grain, because when manufacturers store grain, or the supplier stores the grain that is then milled to go into meal that makes the kibble, there can be a lot of moldiness within those products, and the molds that we find in grains, which are then used to make the kibble, are very resistant to heat, and so they can come out into the bag of kibble. So if you're looking at bacteria and fungal microbiological elements, then, and even if you're looking at bacteria, but we'll look at the grand scale. If you're looking at all the microbiological impact of kibble versus raw food, the tally for injury and death to dogs and humans from kibble is significantly higher per ton of product produced. That's the important thing, yeah, because there's a lot more kibble around than there is raw food around, yeah, because it's been going forever and everybody feeds it. But if you look at it ton for ton, there is a significantly worse body count, humans and dogs and cat wise, for kibble than there is for raw. So that is bacteria in raw food. Get over it. There is bacteria on your hands. There is bacteria in your food. Unless you eat piping hot food straight from the pan, you have got bacteria. So if you eat a salad, you've got bacteria. You eat an apple, you've got bacteria. You eat a cooked pork pie from the supermarket, there is bacteria on that, okay? And this is what we have to realize. If you buy a chicken for your Sunday roast, it does have bacteria. It's going to have potentially Campylobacter. It's going to have potentially E. coli. It's going to potentially have Salmonella even. But you cook that, and so when you eat it, it has gone through a sterilization process. However, when you get it out of the wrapping and you prep it and you put it in the pan and put it in the oven and what have you, you are going to have bacteria around. And that is manageable. Everybody knows that that's manageable for themselves by just washing your hands. And if, when you're handling any pet food, but raw food as well, but kibble, and the body count for kibble is a lot worse than for raw. If you're handling raw or kibbled food, if you wash your hands after you've been feeding, then the safety becomes really very, very good. And that is that's shown in the scientific papers. Wait for the book. It's all there. I'm just writing it at the moment. It's really damning for kibble. And there are incidents of problems with raw, because I just want to be realistic within the book. But kibble is worse. Okay. So for the good doctor who asked me the questions, there is bacteria. But what we find, and when you talk to any raw feeder, they'll say, oh, I've been feeding raw food for 30 years. Yeah, I've been in raw for 30 years. And the number of cases, I can't remember the last time I heard of a dog being injured, yeah, getting sick, or, God forbid, dying from raw. Okay. So it is inherently a safe product. Dogs are very good at handling bacteria because they've spent 40 million years eating carcasses and goodness knows what out in the wild. And so they're actually better able to handle the low level of background bacteria that is on all food that isn't piping hot And so I think that us raw feeders can hold our heads high. My dogs eat raw. Yeah, I've got Mouse and Bluebell and Jet downstairs, and they've been eating raw since the day they arrived with us. And we've raised Arthur and Ophelia. With the previous dog, I inherited Taylor, the big, fluffy, soft German Shepherd, when I met Ellie, and he lived with us, and we raised the kids. And I had to put him down. Oh, that was a terrible day. I had to put him down about it was 2017. So what's that? It's 9 years ago. Okay. So Arthur's 13. So he had 4 years of Taylor raw fed, and then he and FIFA had a couple of years of and a bit of raw fed. So I'm raising children with raw fed dogs, and the cat's been eating raw forever as well, and haven't got a problem. They are unvaccinated children. They are healthy as you like, and um, they do get ill from every now and again, because they're children. And I think that's a good thing. A fever is a protective thing. It tones the immune system, and I think it's really, really important that children do pick up bugs when they're young. But we could talk about that. I'm happy to talk about that. You can ask a question now, or if we do this on a regular basis, you're welcome to ask questions. We can have an entire show on bacteria if you fancy, or microbes. We can talk about mycology. We can talk about Merlin Sheldrake and his incredible book Entangled, which, if you haven't seen it, is an absolute cracker. It's called Entangled. Entangled by Merlin Sheldrake. That's Rupert Sheldrake's son. I did it on audiobook because he's got the most amazing voice. You will absolutely love it. So if you don't know about that, then absolutely jump into that. Coming back to the good doctor's question, she was saying, what about raw food and bacteria? The answer is wash your hands, you're good to go. It is as safe as kibble. When you look at the data over the last 30 years, you're in a great position to feed raw. Just wash your hands. Be sensible. Okay, it's backed by loads and loads of data. Anna Heim-Borkman at Helsinki University, who runs the Dog Risk project, who do need funding. So if your dog has benefited from raw and you want to share it with the world, please look online for Dog Risk and follow them, support them if you're able, because they have probably 40 papers that and the only reason they're not publishing all of those 40 papers is they haven't got the personnel, they haven't got the money to put into a PhD to give them a project to publish some papers with all the data they have. So that's Dog Risk, Helsinki University. They also have a conference every year. It's usually about the second week in September. And so if you're a big raw fan, then that's a great one to get to. If you've never been to Helsinki, then absolutely come along to that. I was meant to be speaking last year, but I wasn't able to make it. I've spoken for it started in about 2020, 2021. I've spoken most years at it. It's a great gathering of all those people who are interested in really, really good nutrition. Not just raw, but raw and fresh. It's basically, how can we make dogs healthy with food? That is, I would imagine, your community. So that's really, really good. Now, lots of people have joined here. Thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate that. Sally is here. Hello, Sally. Nice to see you. So it's actually quite funny because I usually talk to people. You interact directly. Well, maybe see if we can do that on Substack, and maybe get us all on screen, and then we can take it in turns to ask questions. But for now, let's just go with the technology. Yeah, you're jumping around because I'm getting excited. Okay, so let's look at some questions. Let's have a look. Deborah says, yes, please. Deborah, you're going to have to give me context for that. I wonder if I can show these. Visit program, invite to stream. Ooh, invite to stream. I wonder what that means. Okay. I have no idea. Okay, you know what? I've only just started with this. If if anybody actually knows how to use this, I've got visit profile, invite to stream, ban from commenting. I'm not going to ban anybody unless you're absolutely stupid with your questions. And Alan Bashforth is here as well. Yeah, Alan's a great guy. He's a deep thinker, and he produces Lucillin. Have I got any? No, I haven't got any on my desk. Lucillin is a great product. We use it on the dogs. We use it on the children, and he's not paying me any money. Alan, we need to sort that out. That's for sure. But it's basically it's a disinfectant you can use for wounds, and it's related to bleach. Yeah, like Domestos, but it's not. One of my party pieces was that you can spray it in your eye and you're absolutely fine. Okay, so it has a kill effect on really all bacteria and beyond. Yeah, mites. It has a really profound effect on mites and any of these tiny creatures, and then it disappears. It just it lyses down to water very quickly. And I just mentioned that because Alan Bashforth. If you ask any questions, guys, I would imagine Alan can see them, and so ask him questions about Lucillin. Lucillin is spelled Leu. It's like a white blood cell with a leukocyte. Okay, it means white, I presume. Alan, Lucillin, Leucillin. Check it out again. I have no financial ties with Lucillin. I just think it's a great product. They come in little dinky spray bottles, and you can keep them in your pocket for when you're out on walks. And like Jet, for example, he's so scary. He comes back most days and he's got a cut in his leg or something like this, and he feels very miserable for himself. And then he goes out the next morning and he's back out into the bushes. You're here for question and answer, so I'm going to get into question and answer. So we've done the doctor about fresh food and raw food to a certain extent. Just one more answer there with regard to that is, if you take raw food and you very lightly cook it, even if you take prepared from any company you care to mention. I do a lot of work with ProDog, who I like a lot. They're really, really good company. For example, so if you take their product and you very lightly, so a low heat over a short period, I'm talking 1 or 2 minutes, you can very lightly essentially warm that product. And if the dog is off food, for example, for a short time, then that can be useful. Or if bacteria is a real issue, then you can do that for you. Yeah, it's not for the dog. It's not for any of us. But if for some reason you are scared of it, and that's okay, then very light heating stroke cooking is okay. I would try not to, but you can go there. So, and by doing that, you will reduce bacterial numbers substantially. Okay, so if that's an issue, the alternative is you've got to feed ultra processed kibble, and as far as I'm concerned, that is a retrograde step. How many doctors do you know who, when you go to them, say, I know you need to go to McDonald's more often because ultra processed food is really good for you? Okay. That's essentially what it boils down to for me. That it has become the norm that feeding ultra processed food, kibble and canned food to dogs is just accepted, just like it was accepted in the Victorian times to put little boys up chimneys. They did it, and custom can reconcile you to any atrocity, as George Bernard Shaw said. And that's what we're doing. We're feeding a totally species inappropriate food to a dog who's been around for 40 million years, and we're wondering why we've got an epidemic of obesity, of atopic itchy dogs, of IBD dogs, of immune dysfunction, of behavioral disorders. Absolutely rife in the modern dog, unfortunately, and I think food has got a lot to do with it, because the food that you eat influences your microbiome, and when your microbiome is healthy, it helps promote good immune function. And when your microbiome is unhealthy, which is many dogs, then that can negatively impact on your immune system. And so you get all these immune disease, autoimmune disease, you can get IBDs, you can get food sensitivities, these kind of things. So that's the long and the short of it. So I think raw, for me, raw gets the gold position at the Food Olympics. Silver is fresh, so it's good, it's on the podium, it's great. Okay, raw is a little bit higher. And for me, kibble is not even in the stadium. Okay, people say to me, "Oh, what's a healthy kibble?" And I'll say to them, "Well, what's a healthy cigarette?" Okay, some have less tar than others. Some are, I don't know, they have a better filter system, whatever it may be, lower nicotine. I don't know. It's a long time since I smoked, but they're all bad for you. Okay. And I think kibble is in that, frankly. And I'm not being extremist. I gave that up a long time ago. I'm being realistic. These are ultra processed foods. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of papers in the human literature demonstrating that ultra processed food is bad for you. There's the magnificent book by Chris Van Tulleken called Ultra Processed People, where he just spends an entire, I think he did about 107,000 words, talking about the iniquities of ultra processed food. Yeah, don't believe me, believe him. He's a doctor, he's on the BBC, and he's written a book about it. So watch this space. Here we go. Let's do some questions. We've done the doctor, so she's not going to complain at me. Janet Nixon says, look forward to seeing you at the expo. Yeah, Janet, I'll see you then. If anybody doesn't know about the expo, it's in the south of the south. Oh, I can't. No, it's in Birmingham in the UK, not in Alabama. I'd love to go there, but it's in the Birmingham in the UK, and it is about the third weekend of April. If you haven't got a ticket, come along. It's slightly informal. There's some great speakers. I think I've got the graveyard slot at the end. I'm either speaking first thing Sunday morning, or am I closing it? I can't remember. Anyway, I'm going to be speaking on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to that. And at the expo, I'm going to be talking about vaccination and immunity, and what we're going to do. I don't really know what we're going to do, but my thoughts are, your body has an innate resistance to becoming infected, obviously. And so what I'm going to be looking at is, what can we do to promote that innate ability, and how do vaccines figure in that story? Okay. I have always been very suspicious of vaccines in the human sphere. Arthur and Ophelia, 0 vaccines, because I wasn't prepared to risk disease, or, God forbid, worse, with them. And I figured that if I can do what I can to promote their immunity, then they will get 1 or 2 childhood illnesses. It will do them good, and that will set them up for life. Okay, these are the responsibilities one has as being a father, and that was quite an easy one, quite a big decision. But I was, I absolutely stand by that, and I'm delighted. And there's a lot of work coming out now to suggest they've compared vaccinated children and unvaccinated children, and the unvaccinated children have 4 times less asthma and eczema and immunological disease and what have you. So I think science is vindicating that decision. So very interesting stuff. So let's have a look at some of your questions, guys. Ba, 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 ba. Let's have a look. So here we go. Sonia, I think you were in touch with Sasha earlier today. So Sonia, great to see you here. And I'm glad that we can connect through Substack. And she said, can I give straight nettle herb tincture with the great Windkeeper tea pills? I'm not sure what the Great Windkeeper tea pills. It sounds like that's a manufacturer, but Nettles herb tincture is great. And I think the dog was on prednisone. The question that you had with Sasha was on prednisone. I can't, it depends on the case, and talk to your vet, but I would suggest that it's very unlikely that using a nettle tincture at appropriate levels for your dog may help a dog with sensitivities to pollen or whatever it might be. And the chance of that being a problem is very low. Okay. So I can't say for sure, but it's specifically on these chats, by the way, we can't talk about your dog specifically with a specific problem. However, we can talk in general terms about things. So depending on how you ask the question, I'm sure we can go quite a long way in getting to the bottom of any questions. And if I don't know, I don't know much these days, I'm realizing. But if I don't know the answer to the question specifically, I will say, but I can usually point you in the right direction to a book, to a paper, to colleagues who will be able to answer that question sensibly. Okay. I think that's becoming harder and harder to find these days, is reliable human sources of information. So Sonia, I would say you're probably fine with the nettle tincture. I would always start tinctures low and build up until you get to the right dose over maybe a week or so. So I hope that's helpful. Margaret has said, which bones are best to give a 12-kilo dog for cleaning teeth purposes rather than bone content purposes, as he's already had bone in his pre-bought minced food? That is a brilliant question, Margaret. Love it. Because you've kind of answered it yourself in that you're saying, so the implication, and I've just had a lovely Substack with Josie Berg, Beug, Josie Berg. You can check her out on Substack, and you might be able to see that conversation where we go in depth with the whole bone question. So, Margaret, have a look at that, and we talk about bones for about 40 minutes in the hour's conversation. However, I'm going to answer your question right now. So, if we're trying to clean the teeth of a 12-year-old dog, now I'm going to assume that your 12-kilo dog is about the right weight, that it's not a dog who should be 8 kilos and is 4 kilos overweight. Okay, because you're feeding raw, so I imagine that the dog is in pretty good shape. So we're probably dealing with a Westie or a Terrier or maybe a Whippet or a Bluebell, for example. She's a Whippet Italian Greyhound, and she's she should be about 12 kilos. She's about 14 because she's very lazy and very hungry and eats all chicken food, la la la. Okay, if we're trying to clean teeth, we don't want them to consume very much. So the softer end of things is not so good. I would suggest with that dog, if they are familiar with bones, I would be looking at ribs. So I was saying to Josie just now, I always point to bits of the anatomy when I'm talking about anatomy. So we're talking about ribs, we're talking about brisket, we're talking about vertebrae. We are talking about really anything that's not brittle leg bone. Maybe pigs, trotters. So what you're looking for, therefore, Margaret, is you're looking for bones with a from a protein animal source that the dog can tolerate. Yeah. So if the dog can't tolerate beef, don't use beef ribs, for example. Um, um, so that's that. I've just been distracted by another question. And so if Margaret, your dog can take beef bones, then beef ribs might be ideal for a small dog. And I would get them as long as possible. Yeah, don't chop them up into like bite-sized pieces. Get them as long as possible, because then here's my trusty pen, well, kind of a pen. What the dog will do is the dog will start at this end and go chew, 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 chew. And with a bit of luck, they will go chew, 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 and then go chew, chew, chew. Okay. I've got a great video of Jet eating a chicken wing, and it's a sight to behold. It's really magnificent. Okay. And so what he'll do is he will go chew, chew, and then he'll flip it over like this. Oops, gone out of focus. And then he'll flip it over and he'll go chew, chew. And then he'll flip it back over here. This is one fairly big, chunky chicken wing. Chew, chew, and then usually chew, chew, and then and swallow it down in about 20, 30 seconds or so. Okay. That's how dogs do it. And he's learned that because he's been fed them since he was 16 weeks when he first came to us a couple of years ago. Okay. However, for your dog, I would suggest beef ribs or venison ribs or lamb ribs or pork ribs. Long is a good idea. Okay. So I hope that's of use. Okay. Let me see. Sonia says, these number will never be out in the general public. I don't know what that's referring to. Oh, I know. No, I think maybe you're talking to someone else as well. These numbers will never be out to the general. Let's make your book a bestseller to tell everyone. Sonia, fantastic. That is exactly what I want. Okay. We want to get it to everybody. The big food manufacturer is going to hate it because I'm going to be telling the truth. And you're going to love it. Okay. Deborah says yes to weekly chats. I think it's a good idea, actually. Yeah, I'm missing Raw Pet Medics where I'm with those other two reprobates, Connor and Brendan. We are doing monthly chats, but freeing my time up from Raw Pet Medics allows me to do this. I think if I was doing Raw Pet Medics, I might not have been able to do this, which is a slightly different flavor of thing. But I do miss working with the two guys on a weekly basis. We are doing a monthly. Okay. So thank you to our Patreon that you're supporting us. That's great. We are doing monthly, but we are doing some really good work in it with other projects. I'm writing my book. I'm doing the Substack. I'm going to be doing these probably on a weekly basis. Okay. Collapse is here. Just been speaking to Collapse. Her name is Zara. I think Zara. It begins with a Z. I can't remember. Collapse. But you're very welcome. If Collapse, you have got a link to Josie's Substack where people might be able to find a copy of the vid that we've just done. That would be really good. If I can find it and I remember, I will post it up so you can see it. Okay, it's just basically an introduction to feeding bones to dogs. Okay. Jane says Lucillin is brilliant. Yes. Heidi Dixon, did I hear correctly that Lucillin can be used for mites? I believe so. On the stand, they do a lot of dog shows and what have you. And on the stand, there are big pictures of mites. I'm not sure what the evidence is. You'd have to talk to Alan. His daughter is called Georgina. And if you give them a buzz, I'm sure they'll be able to talk you through what the Lucillin can be used for. We use it here for the kids, for us, for the dogs. It's really, really useful. Okay. Correctly. Okay, Sonia. So Sonia says, we feed gently cooked from all provide. Can you still be here? Yes, of course you can. Yes, you can. Listen, even if you're feeding kibble, you could be here. Yeah, it's just like if we were talking about healthy lungs and you were a smoker, you would be welcome because then you can learn more about how to make your lungs more healthy. Okay, nobody is cut from this conversation. Okay, that's not how you change the world. Everybody's welcome, and let's discuss it. If you don't like raw, let's discuss that. Why don't you like it? What's the problem? Let's examine it, get it on the table, and try and move forward. I am totally committed to revealing the truth, hence the name of the Substack, Raw Truth, so that we can shed light on just the terrible state of pet food to our beloved dogs and cats in the UK, in the USA, all over the world. We're doing them such harm, and it grieves me. And I think we can do something about it. And that's what this is all about. And also, I really enjoy doing Substacks. I haven't got time. I haven't got time to write all the Substacks. I've got a list on my phone of Substacks that I can, and I'm at about 100 ideas. So if you've got thoughts, actually, while we're here, dear, dear subscribers and free followers and what have you, just let me know one way or another. I've just started the within the Raw Truth Substack. There is a chat, so if you're a subscriber, you can jump on there, and you're welcome to join the conversation. Okay, let's get the word out. Let's get the truth out there between us. Okay, let's continue with our questions. Okay, so Heidi Dixon, mites and lucillin. Yeah, give them a buzz. Just do a Google on lucillin and follow the link, and you'll probably be able to ring up the office and they'll give you some good information. And cooked, great. You're really welcome. Microplastics. Okay. Jane says microplastics and the gut. I haven't looked into it in depth, but I will. There's only so much you can put into one book, but here you go. So my knowledge of microplastics is that they are toxic in and of themselves. They have a lot of phthalates. These are the kind of forever chemicals within them, and in the gut, the bacteria, the yeast, the archaea, which is kind of old style bacteria, they will interact with those microplastics because they're so tiny. They have a high surface area, and so there can be a lot of interactions between fungal elements, mycelium within the fungi, and the microplastics, and there may be a degree of transfer of those toxins, which can then affect the bacteria within the gut, which can then skew the balance of the bacteria in the gut and push more towards dysbiosis. Net result, maybe runny poos, maybe regurgitation, maybe immune dysfunction, maybe like poor appetite, maybe loss of weight, maybe bad coat, maybe autoimmune disease if you're very unlucky. But anything that disrupts that gut biome can affect the immune system, and basically the immune system is everything. Yeah. If your immune system stops working at breakfast, you're not going to see the end of the day. Okay. It is that vitally important. So interesting stuff. We can do a show about plastics, microplastics and what have you, but you've got to ask me. Okay. Because There's a lot going on, but we're going to do the most likely. Nah, we're going to do weekly shows, okay? Because this is good. So let's do that. Please keep in touch on Substack, and we can make this thing up as we go along. That's really quite exciting. Yeah, Jane says the expo is at the VOC St. John Hotel in Birmingham. So great. Thank you for Jane. Voco St. John. That's right. Funny name, but there you go. In Solihull in Birmingham, UK, not Birmingham, Alabama. Big brave decision. Not quite sure what you're referring to there. Michelle says, "Oh, I think you guys are talking, and I can't see some of the stuff that you're saying because Michelle says Connor's chat with Paula about vaccinosis was interesting. I think the mix of processed food and vaccines destroys the immune system. Well, maybe that is to me. Yeah, absolutely. I think anything that affects the microbiome, and that is so. There's a nice line of thought. What affects the microbiome? That's a brilliant question. When I finish the book on ultra processed food for dogs, the next one I'm planning before I get to feeding dogs on a budget and dogs and cancer, the first one that I'm going to do after the ultra processed one is dogs and microbiome. And we're just going to talk about every element of the dog's microbiome of the skin and the gut and the mouth, and how that influences health and how life can influence the microbiome. So I'm thinking about that. I should be just thinking about ultra processed food, but I am thinking about that as well. Okay. What an exciting life I lead. Genuinely. So what affects the immune system? So if you feed species inappropriate food, that will affect the immune system, obviously. Yeah. If you put the wrong fuel into your car, you will get problems. Simple as that. But it's not just that. Pharmaceuticals have the effects that they are designed to affect, but they always have side effects. Okay. All pharmaceuticals have side effects. Some of them are minor. Some drugs that we use don't have very many side effects at all. Some have a lot of side effects, but none of them are completely side effect free. And those side effects can affect the microbiome. And that would include antibiotics. That's the obvious one. That will skew to dysbiosis. But also we're talking any steroids. We're talking about, any drug that goes into the dog by mouth or injectable or even drop-ons. I think Rodney Habib has done some work showing that the microbiome changes even with drop-ons. Yeah, he's taken a sample before using a drop-on pesticide with a dog for fleas and ticks, and then he's taken another sample a few weeks later, and he's demonstrated there is a change in the microbiome, which is fascinating science. Okay. What else changes? This changes the microbiome because there is a gut-brain axis. Okay. So what happens in your gut can affect the mind, and in the veterinary sphere, that's called behavior. Yeah, it can change. So food can change behavior, and there are many mechanisms for that. We can do a show on it. Absolutely great. But there is also what happens in your mind can affect your gut. We know that as humans because it manifests things like butterflies before an exam or before a big event. Okay. So there is a two-way conversation between function of the gut and function of the brain, and function of the brain and function of the gut. And so if you want to really round things up, most things can affect gut. And the job of the gut, the job of the microbiome, the job of the lining of the gut, job of the immune system of the gut is to maintain an equilibrium with a balance of so-called bad guys and so-called good guys. Now, there's a show in itself in that in the old days, we used to say, these are pathogens, Clostridium, E. coli, Salmonella. But then when we look, and we've kind of always known, they are often commensal. They live in the normal cat, dog, human. Okay, so that's a bit of a problem. When they're over here, we call them a pathogen, and when they're over here, they're not a pathogen. That is a good show, actually. So the job of the gut is to maintain this population of fungi, some tiny little microfilaria parasites, bacteria, digester, stuff that you've eaten. It's to maintain all that within an equilibrium, because the body benefits from gut contents, and the gut contents benefits from a well-functioning gut as well. Yeah, it's a two-way street. As with most things in nature, most things in biology, it's a two-way street. And that's a very interesting phenomenon. Okay, so good stuff there. Let's go on with some questions. Oh, Sonia says it wasn't me talking to Sasha. Okay, Sonia, somebody has asked Sasha today about nettles with a dog who was on we call it prednisolone, you guys call it prednisone. But yeah, using nettle tincture is usually pretty safe, because they're just nettles. You can feed them to dogs. If you haven't tried that, actually, when they're in season, you get really clean, fresh, young nettles, and you lightly steam them like spinach, and you can feed them to the dog. And you can use the juice as tea, which you can have. It's mildly anti-inflammatory, very nutritious, high in potassium, those kind of things, and it's very good, and it's free. Yeah, you can just get it. Just make sure nobody's peed on it or anything like that. But yeah, very, very, very healthy. So this is good. Okay. So Sonia, it wasn't you. Yep, got that. So Heidi says, thanks, Nick. I'm thinking of using it on the rats for mites. I'm out of ivermectin. Handy to know. Okay, have a chat with Lucillin, because if you've got deep burrowing mites like Demodex, then I'm not sure whether the Lucillin will be able to penetrate in. Okay, because there are commonly sauroptic, and demodectic mites. Okay, and they do different things within the skin. So you just have to ivermectin. I thought that they did, and it might even be prescription, but you can get kind of drop-ons for rabbits and what have you as of ivermectin. Don't know. I don't do small furries these days. So that's not on the top of my tongue, but that's what Google or ChatGPT is for. You can just say, how can I get an ivermectin product for a small furry? Okay. Yeah. Do some research and you'll be able to find that, I'm sure. Okay. So Heidi, that's you. Great. Very good. And Deborah says, would you recommend adding fermented turmeric to a diet to assist the biome health? Ooh, Deborah, have you been reading my posts on fermented turmeric? Well, I hope you have. That's great. That's a very positive recommendation. I'm getting really excited because fermented turmeric, and the ones that I'm looking at is Bhutanese fermented turmeric, and it produces something like 550. They've analyzed the products. When you take the turmeric and you ferment it with certain special bacteria, you can get certain products. These are called postbiotics, and they are very beneficial to the gut. Okay. A prebiotic is things like slippery elm that feed the good bugs in your gut. A probiotic is when you eat bugs, so Actimel, Yakult, things like that. And a postbiotic is something that provides um, the products produced by bacteria. Okay, postbiotic, after life. They've fermented them, and these are the products of fermentation. That's a postbiotic, and the research is fabulous, astronomical, and is well worth watching. I'm going to be posting more and more about postbiotics because it's something that I'm very, very interested in. I'm doing a bit of work with the postbiotic company as we speak. And so watch this space. Very exciting, very safe, and potentially very beneficial to dogs and cats and horses and people. Yeah, those funny things called people. Okay, so that's good. So I would say yes, fermented turmeric. Deborah, yes, absolutely. Rachel, may have been Dr. Rachel actually. So Dr. Rachel, if you are Dr. Rachel, I answered your question earlier in the video, so this might be available on a playback, and you're very welcome to that when I talk about fresh food and raw food. Okay. S. Finnan says, am I correct in thinking that when the dog is on omeprazole, they have to be 100% tapered off before being able to feed raw because of pH and bacteria? Okay, that's a really nice question. Okay, so S. Finnan, omeprazole reduces stomach acid. It does not eliminate stomach acid. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to eat, obviously. Okay, it reduces. I think, and this is just my opinion, that it is overused in many, many cases in people and in animals. And there are many situations where you don't need to use omeprazole. I have got dogs who are on omeprazole who are able to take raw food. If there is any question, though, you can lightly, as we said earlier, you can very lightly cook even a complete raw. You just you expose it to heat at in a pan on the hob for a few minutes at a low heat till really you just get changing color, and then you feed it. You do not cook it because otherwise the bone is going to turn into reinforced concrete, and you may get all sorts of problems with silting up in the gut and what have you. So don't cook it. Just give it some color, give it some smell. If the dog is inappetent, then that can be very useful as well. And if you are on full dose omeprazole for a short time, then I would be totally happy with you cooking the food, because when you use omeprazole, you reduce the ability of the whole gut to digest food, which is why I don't like omeprazole in most cases. What was I saying? Yeah. So if you are on omeprazole, then lightly cooked food will reduce the bacterial load, which means that because there's less acid in the stomach, that food is less likely to carry bacteria that shouldn't be in the small intestine through to the small intestine. Yeah, because normally food enters your mouth, down your gullet, into your stomach, gets bathed, washed in really strong acid, which is a fantastic bacterial killer for which there is no resistance. You know, we're having all these problems with antimicrobial resistance at the moment. Well, nature sorted that one out 40 million years ago by just bathing everything, all food that comes into the body, washes it in really strong acid and will reduce bacterial numbers enormously. Okay. And we come along with the omeprazole and reduce the amount of acid that the dog is able to produce. Okay, it is indicated in some situations, but I think that overuse of omeprazole is not a good idea. Okay, so I hope that has answered your question, S. Finnan. I personally, I would look to be modifying diet to get off the omeprazole as soon as possible, and as the digestive problems improve, then getting back onto raw as soon as you can. I have got dogs on omeprazole on raw because the owner says I am not, definitely not feeding kibble, and they came off feeding cooked food, and dog was fine. Okay, so in medicine, nothing is absolute. It's not like a switch. You put in the omeprazole, stomach shuts off. That's not what happens. It just reduces it. Okay. So Sarah Spurdens. Hello, Sarah. Sarah with Bliss. Can you add too many supplements to your dog's diet? Yes. Yes, you can. Or you can have too much of anything, can't you? Be happy to talk with you, but we can do it here. Absolutely. We've got about 3 minutes left. So, yes. How many supplements is too many supplements? I think we should do an entire show. Please tell me. Yeah, just put it in the chat. On as a subscriber, you can contribute to the chat. We will do a show on supplements. I'll tell you what I take. I'll tell you what I give my dogs. Answer: not very much. Supplements, they get great food, because I think that in the ideal world, you don't really need many supplements at all. The problem is that I realize that we are not living in an ideal world, and therefore I'm trying to fill in the holes in my diet, and I eat pretty well. I'm trying to fill in the holes with supplements that I see there might be a deficit. So I take B vitamins, for example, because I don't eat enough liver. What I have been doing the last few months is I've been using the hunter-gather Icelandic lamb's liver, which is lamb's liver in capsules. Yeah. So basically it's lamb's liver desiccated, put into capsules, and you can just take those every day. So if you can't eat liver, that's a really good one. Some people just can't bear the thought of eating liver. Fine, you can do that. It's just capsules, like you take vitamin C. And I do that because I try to eat as much liver as possible, but it's just, I don't always do it. I'd like to eat organ meat every single week because it's so full of iron, magnesium, selenium, all the B vitamins. It's wonderful. We could do, that'd be a great show. Let's do a show on liver, what it is, what it does, how it's a great nutrient. Maybe we could look at liver disease. We can look at feeding dogs with liver disease. You see, the the options are endless for us. Okay, because I've given myself a whole hour on Raw Pet Medics. We used to do 45, and so I'm really keen to do that. Okay, so just coming to the last minute, and Janet, please ask me that question again on the next show.